Space Babies, or as I like to call them, the anti-woke crowd, is the first episode of Season 1 of Doctor Who. No, not that Season 1. Or that Season 1. Wow, that's a deep cut. This episode serves as Russell's pitch to us for his second era of Doctor Who. So, is it any good? The episode opens with a slightly updated title sequence. Those office zoom-ins of the time vortex are gone. Instead, we just follow the TARDIS through the vortex. I like the change. It keeps that cinematic feeling they were going for without it making me feel like Jim Halpert's going to pop out of the screen. Our first scene of the episode has the usual bells and whistles of a companion introduction. Bigger on the inside, all the time and space. My whole planet got murdered. Typical Doctor Who exposition. If it sounds like I just ploughed straight through the Doctor's planet being destroyed, well, so did the episode. The exposition is more to catch up new fans than anything else. Even that being said though, it is insanely rapid pace. Honestly, I think 11's sneeze regeneration lasted longer than the exposition done. The Doctor isn't as emotional over the loss of Gallifrey like in the first Russell era. He's a much more positive Doctor compared to the last few incarnations. His past comes up a couple of times, but it's never played for pure sadness like in the old days, or that hidden rage. He's open about it, then proceeds to share his chirpy outlook on life despite his hardships. As promised by the 60th, this Doctor isn't as weighed down by anger or trauma. He's moved past it and is now looking to the future. Speaking of looking to the future, the Doctor and Ruby actually don't go to the future. Instead, they detour to the past with dinosaurs, where Ruby steps on a butterfly and becomes a weird butterfly creature. I'm sure you all saw the scenes in the trailer and was all quite excited for it. I was excited for it. But there's a problem. It has nothing to do with the episode. Like, at all. In fact, the resolution of this scene is the Doctor bringing a butterfly back to life by breathing on it and undoing the time paradox. Healing stuff with breathing. We're long past the days of 2020 now. It's such a weird scene. I know the Doctor's always had like vague powers of some kind, lest we forget his exposition headbutts he gave to James Corden, but just the kiss of life to a butterfly? Can he just revive things now? Did he give up a couple of years of his life? It's really vague and it doesn't serve to do much. I mean, I get what the scene was trying to do. It was trying to show that, hey, time travel actually has consequences. Problem is, they release 2 episodes at once, and they show this in the next episode. And unlike this episode, it's actually a part of the story. The episode's premise doesn't even get started whilst we do this weird detour, and I just don't think it was necessary. It's a quick bit of comedy, but there is more than enough comedy in this episode. Ruby and the Doctor arrive on the space station. They're on it for about 2 seconds before they see the boogeyman and run away terrified. The Doctor is uncharacteristically scared of it, which winds up being a plot point later on about how the boogeyman came to be. This scene is a good time to mention the awful editing in this episode. The first boogeyman jump scare has like 3 cuts in 2 seconds, and it never lets up. You can never really settle on what you're looking at, because before you know it, you're onto another shot. Apparently, blink was more of a warning for the editors than it was the angel.
Don't blink. Don't even blink.
Anyway, they escape the bogeyman and the episode immediately buries the lead on him. It makes the butterfly scene all the more frustrating because they could have used that time characterising the bogeyman. Yeah, he doesn't talk, but how does he behave? What makes him want to attack Ruby and the Doctor? By the end of the episode, they're going to try and make you sad for this thing and save its life, but we learn nothing substantial about it. It's not characterised in any way. All we see it do is try and eat people, which is fine if the goal is to kill it or avoid it by the end, but by the end of the episode they try and domesticate it like a fucking XL bully. It has no proper build-up or resolution to it. Instead, the episode switches its focus to the main focus, the Space Babies. I really do like it as a premise given the story of Ruby and the Doctor, both abandoned as children with no idea why, both without answers. I really love how Russell can take what seems like a stupid premise like talking space babies and make it character driven There's some great contrasting as well between Ruby and the Doctor. Ruby wants answers about her past, whereas the Doctor just wants to move forward. He doesn't seem to care as much about Ruby about his past. It gives each of them a commonality without them both acting exactly the same, given that they both have such a similar background. It seems like such high praise for something so basic in storytelling, but given the closest Doctor Who came to characterisation in the past 5 years was an old woman shouting Benny for 45 minutes, yeah, I'll take the win. It is unfortunate that it's the second episode in a row where the plot is about babies. Even the episode itself references this. It's done better here compared to in the Church and Ruby Road, but I don't know, it's just a weird choice in terms of a season structure. Even 1 or 2 episodes between the Church and Ruby Roads and this one would have made more sense. The Doctor and Ruby meet the babies, and it is the schmaltziest scene you will ever see. Honestly, if you're watching this with your partner, turn it off. This episode should really come with a baby fever warning. I predict a few DW babies in 9 months' time. There's roughly 12 babies in the episode. I don't know, it doesn't really matter. There's only 2 of them given any sort of character, and even that's kind of minimal. There's Eric, the rizziest little fella you'll ever see. Then there's Captain Poppy. Captain Poppy's whole thing is she feels like she was abandoned because they were different. The babies were supposed to age appropriately, but they didn't. The minds grew, but the bodies didn't. And so she feels like she was abandoned because they were different. I really love her scenes with the Doctor. It prompts him to give this speech about how he's different, but how it's a good thing that he's different. There is only one of him in the universe. There is only one of anyone in the universe. This is what I expect to be the first of many Ncuti Gatwa Doctor Who speeches. And as far as the first one goes, it's amazing. I really love it. He's just got an infectious, loving nature to him. It's kind of like the universe's older brother. You just can't help but fall in love with him and look up to him. The Doctor and Ruby head for a storage unit on the behest. The behest? It's such a weird word, behest. Fuck it, we'll roll with it. At the behest of the ship's computer system known as Nan-E. It does have a sciencey jargon to it, but it don't really matter as the twist will be revealed that Nan-E is actually an actual person and not just a ship's computer. But hey, that's plot stuff, and before we get to the plot stuff, we got a halt to hype up this season's mystery box. The Doctor ends up flashing back to that night on Christmas on the Ruby Road. Only this time it's a little bit different. The mysterious woman, presumably Ruby's mother, or Ruby, or whoever you can throw fan theory at, turns round and actually points at the Doctor. At first, I thought this was like a recontextualisation. I can't remember Church and Ruby Road all too well, but I assumed, we're seeing more of that scene. Maybe the Doctor actually did go up to her, but no, as it turns out, his memory gets altered and he chalks this up to Ruby altering it. Not only this, but then it starts snowing on the ship, showing that even ships can't avoid climate change. It seems the snow motif actually comes back in the next episode and at the end of this episode, so it looks as though it snowing might be this season's Bad Wolf. It's no crack in the wall, but, well, I'm intrigued, so it's doing the job that it needs to do. Realising the main plot's being hijacked though, Jocelyn, the Nan-E, comes in and fills us in on what has happened with the space station. The workers abandoned it as they felt it was immoral, but they also couldn't stop the baby harvesting machine because it's illegal to stop the birthing process. So the ship just carries on making babies, even though there's no one to look after them. It's so close to a pro-choice, pro-life argument, but it doesn't quite sit with it very long. There's an argument to be made about the morality of that system, a system that forces unwanted births but then doesn't care enough to home them. In fact, it's a problem we face today. Even Ruby brings it up, since a similar thing happened to her, being abandoned by her mother. We also find out a bunch of other little stuff, like the ship's falling apart and things are just breaking down, and also that there is very much a lifeline on this ship at the minute. Resources are running out, there's only so much oxygen. There's actually a really dark moment with Jocelyn where she says the reason she didn't bother meeting the babies is because she doesn't want to see them die, or want them to see her die. It's so dark, but like, so good as well. It really makes you feel for her, even though she was just introduced like 2 seconds ago. On the monitors, we see that Eric has gone down to the bogeyman because Ruby said he isn't real. I love Ruby's reaction to this. She told them it wasn't real, so to try and calm them down, and now it's put one of them in danger. There's a moment earlier in the episode where the Doctor just flings his arms up and shouts the bogeyman at the babies and just scares the shit out of them. And all the while he's laughing about it, Ruby is desperately trying to calm him down and scowling at the Doctor. I can't help but feel this is the payoff. He scared them to keep him away from it, from his years of experience, whereas Ruby, with no experience in situations like this, just wanted to make the babies feel better. It's a good way to contrast them subtly, and I hope we see more of it. In fact, Ruby actually takes the lead in trying to save Eric. Feeling so guilty, she just runs straight off without a plan. There's even a moment where the camera lingers on the doorway where Ruby runs out, as it waits for the Doctor to go. Whilst Ruby just rushed off to save the day because she put Eric in danger, the Doctor was grabbing I think it was a spanner, now that I think about it. It does such a good job of showing how different these characters are and how different their approach is. Ruby rushes off straight away, whereas the Doctor takes a moment to compose himself and come up with some sort of plan, or just grab anything, even a spanner, and it does come into effect in a little way in the next scene. They rush down to the basement and they find that the stroller that Eric was in has been overturned and is missing. I genuinely thought, and I don't know why I thought it, given, it's Doctor Who and it's Russell, but I genuinely thought, oh shit, the bogeyman ate the baby. But no, they obviously assume, he's just gone on a merry little stroll. It's never established if the babies can walk or crawl or what, but they end up finding him in a locker later on. So apparently he's got enough wit about him to somehow open a locker where the handle is way too high up to grab and then crawl it. It's nitpicky, I know it's nitpicky, but I've also given some praise to some small things that might not have even been intentional. So I think it's fair to say I can nitpick a little bit on this. Anyway, Ruby, the Doctor, and Eric all end up getting cornered by the bogeyman, and then they're all saved by the other babies brandishing a flamethrower. I can't even be mad, honestly. The premise of the episode, like I've mentioned, I mean, it's a stupid premise. It is. But the key to making any premise work is to just commit to it. You gotta commit to the bit. And thankfully, they commit fucking arson. The baby's all swan off to safety, and the bogeyman has also buggered off to wherever he goes. Again, they don't establish much with the bogeyman. Speaking of which, they found a computer in the wall so we can establish some more lore on the bogeyman. Yeah, it's becoming a bit of a running theme in Russell episodes lately. I say lately, he's only been back for half a year, maybe? Yeah, probably about half a year if you count the specials. But it's coming up quite a lot where the Doctor will just find a monitor or a screen and just find all the information out all at once. They even make an effort in The Wild Blue Yonder to show that the Doctor does not know the language of whatever alien species owned that ship. And yet, from trying to just figure out what the numbers 1, 2, 3 are in their language, the Doctor somehow figures out, by using a computer, that an airlock opened 3 years earlier, and also finds out that there's a drone in the ship so they can survey the outside of it. It's really bizarre. The computer reveals that the bogeyman is essentially an extension of the birthing machine upstairs, only it's working downstairs. The babies get born upstairs, the bogeyman was created downstairs using, and I am honestly very annoyed I didn't pick up on this, given they have a scene earlier in the episode where the babies all sneeze, but the bogeyman is made of bogies. Again, I'm shocked I didn't spot this out. I mean, for one, I call the bogeyman the boogeyman. I think most people do. So the fact that they were emphasising calling him the bogeyman should have been a huge flag to me of, maybe he's made of bogies. The highlight of this scene, though, of them learning this, is that just right before this scene, Ruby got covered in snot from the ceiling before knowing what it was. And she just sits there in disgust, knowing she's covered in snot, whilst the Doctor just pisses himself with laughter. This is what I mean by he feels like an older brother compared to, like, the other Doctors. Like, she's there covered in snot, and he's just having the time of his life at it. It's kind of like the way, it's like, if your sibling falls over, like, it's funny, you're gonna laugh about it. But then if you see they're genuinely hurt, you're gonna go into Big Brother mode. That's how I feel about the Doctor. The boogeyman comes back and they chase him for a bit because, well, that's all the bogeyman has done this whole episode. Like I said, he's really just not fleshed out as a monster at all. It doesn't have any behavioural patterns. It's scary looking, but it's not very threatening. And it seems like I'm harping on this a lot for just a one-off monster of the week. But during the chase, they lead it into an airlock. Jocelyn, from the control centre, locks the door and then opens the airlock door to just eject it into space. And the Doctor and Ruby freak out about this. The Doctor sends Ruby to Jocelyn to try and get her to stop, whilst the Doctor risks his life to save this monster that has tried to eat babies. It's just, like, I get what they were doing, and the play on this idea of, like I mentioned earlier in the episode with the Doctor speaking with Poppy. He mentions, I am the only one of me, you're the only one of you, and they relay the bogeyman back to the Doctor. But it's just so underbaked, and the bogeyman, he has no redeeming qualities. They're trying to pull off, like, a Beast Below thing, with the Star Whale from that episode. But the difference is, the Star Whale never hurt anyone in that episode at all. And the one scene we see of the Star Whale doing anything, it's comforting a kid. So there was actually hints that the Star Whale wasn't so bad. The bogeyman outright tried to eat a baby, and was only scared off because the other babies rocked up packing literal fucking heat. But yet, we're supposed to care about it, and care about the fact that Jocelyn is going to eject this creature out into the vacuum of space. And they don't even have a proper resolution to this after they actually do save the bogeyman as well. Because later on, they show him on the monitor to the babies, who now all love the thing for some reason, and he's still in the airlock. You know why he's still in the airlock? Because he tries to fucking eat people. There's just no resolution to the bogeyman's story at all. I actually don't think he was needed in the episode. I mean, the ship was already falling apart. If they wanted intense, dangerous moments, you can just have that by the ship malfunctioning throughout the episode. The bogeyman just clutters what already feels like a cluttered episode. I'm not saying he's bad, but it's just underdeveloped. It feels like the only reason he was there because they had babies, and a common enemy of babies is the bogeyman. Oh, the bogeyman's coming to get you. And I mentioned earlier on that the Doctor has a flashback and it starts snowing inside the ship. And in this, it's said that the reason the Doctor was so scared of the bogeyman, why all of them was so scared of the bogeyman, is that whilst the ship was malfunctioning, it mixed up its fact and fiction section in the computer system. And so the ship has some sort of psychic link to them. Honestly, I don't know. They don't explain it an awful lot. But for what they do explain is the ship was making people more afraid of the bogeyman than they should be. And this kind of links it back to why it was snowing on board the ship earlier on with Ruby. It was a memory inside the Doctor's mind being projected into reality by the ship itself. That kind of feels like the only reason why the bogeyman and the science behind him was in there, was so that we could stop the plot dead in its tracks and have a tease for the big end of season mystery with Ruby. And it just don't feel worth it. Anyway, the episode concludes with the Doctor saving the day with a massive fart. I'm not making that up. That's genuinely what happens. Right, context. The ship, I mentioned earlier that the ship was converting all the snot into bogies. The ship also had a moment of mentioning that the babies would have a change in time because they're babies, of course they are. And they've all been on that ship for 6 years. They also mention that there was a build-up of pressure in one of the storage units. Turns out this build-up of pressure was from the baby's nappies. And so when the Doctor needs to move the space station along so it can move towards a refugee... And when the Doctor needs to move the ship forward so he can move it towards so he can move it towards a planet where the babies can now live, he uses the nappies as fuel to do it. Look, it sounds stupid, it is stupid, but given all of the setup I just explained, this payoff actually has more build-up and more connection to the plot than the fucking Bogeyman does. You could look at it as like a metaphor for the show itself. We must use our shitty past as fuel for our bright future. Maybe that's what Russell was going for. Or maybe he just likes farts. Oh, it's the second thing, isn't it? Yeah, it's the second thing. So that right there wraps up the main bulk of the plot for this episode. There is a scene after it with the Doctor taking Ruby back home on Christmas Day to be with her family, after he also explains to her that he can't ever take her to her mum because it would cause a paradox and everything like that. Something Ruby is sad about, but that she begrudgingly kind of understands. I'm not going to talk too much about that scene because it's more of a setup scene for later. Like, the scene has the Doctor scanning Ruby to see if that she's actually human, because there's a very good chance she's not. But then the episode does end, and the next episode doesn't bring it up. So I'm not going to talk too much about future hints. I will be doing like a full season recap once the series is out, and I will do a proper review of that full story. I don't think it's fair to review scenes on the premise of how they are in the episode, because it is separate, in a sense. It doesn't connect in with the plot. So we'll put that on the back burner, and we'll save that for later. We'll see how Ruby's story wraps up in a later date. So, that was Space Babies. It was okay. It's very middle of the road Doctor Who. It's not going to be hitting anyone's top 10s anytime soon. I'd be very shocked if it hit anyone's bottom 10s either, because there is plenty of stuff to like in this episode. The Doctor and Ruby are characterised very well, and their dynamic is fleshed out quite well. I really love seeing them together, and it was really good seeing both of them have great moments. Not only great moments to save the day, but they both have a different approach to it as well. The Space Babies, like I said, it was schmaltzy. There's going to be a lot of people coming into this episode being like, I don't like it, the Space Babies. People were coming into the episode before that anyway, just based on the title alone. The Bogeyman is underdeveloped. The ship falling apart comes up a few times. There's a lot in the episode, and not all of them are bad, but they're just not fleshed out. The Bogeyman, the reason he exists, the fact that he is made of bodily fluids, which, it's Russell. Aliens made of bodily fluids, it's just kind of his thing for some reason. But it's not developed very well. It doesn't play a huge part. If anything, the biggest part it plays in the plot is just kind of interrupting it. There's a lot of moments in this episode where you're settling into something, but then, there's another plot point this episode is doing, so we need to go and do that. And not all of them are balanced very well. There's a lot of interesting ideas and going on in the episode, and I think that if they'd have just stripped a couple of back and focused on one, it would have made the episode good rather than okay. Like I said, it's very middle of the road Doctor Who. If you're a Doctor Who fan, plenty of things to enjoy in here. If you don't like the show, there's plenty of rage bait material for a clickbait thumbnail. After all, Doctor Who is for everyone. So, I did hope to have this episode out, days ago, but I'm a bit of an editing novice, so it's taken me way longer than I thought it would. Devil's Code review, expect it. I don't know when, but it's coming. Till then, like, subscribe, and I hope you enjoyed watching.